again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latest gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Phil J. Pride, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one-stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. It's been a while. It feels like it's been a while.
Yeah.
Big Blue, how are you doing, my man?
Doing good. I took my final today and I got a decent score, so I'm happy today. So I'll have a beer here in a little bit. I'm going to get one here out of the fridge.
Nice, man. Well, congratulations to you, my man. Thank you so much for I appreciate everything you do for us here on the Drunk Turkey Show, and thank you so much for what you do for our community, my man.
Yeah, man, just trying to get to where I can do more.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we have a new member, Sarah, coming in with her membership. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a member. We appreciate you. So we had a show planned in for today. Unfortunately, there was some things that ended up going kind of array. So let's talk first and foremost. We had a guest that was planned to come on the show. Her name, she goes by the name of Forensic Frenzy, True Crime. This is a interview that she did with Andrew Garrett Discovery, and she couldn't make it today for a specific reason. And we're going to talk about what she talks about here, but what she's brought up to the attention to everybody when it comes to the potential connection between Bryan Kohberger and the victims has made its way into the investigation now, and she cannot speak on it until the investigation has been cleared up. She sent me an email basically saying that, sorry, I was trying to, no, wait, that was the earlier one. Here it is. It says, sorry, I was just made aware that the document is under investigation and that the attorneys are reaching out to GD, which is Garrett Discovery. I was also asked to refrain from speaking from the interview. And it says here, I'm not going to go into everything because it's between me and her, but it says here that the document is finally in the right hands. And it'll be able to establish whether or not there indeed was a connection between Bryan Kohberger and the victims. And so the mere fact that they, at law enforcement, from what I understanding here, and the prosecution has asked her to stop this, and they're now investigating these documents. What does that tell you, Big Blue?
I mean, that they're important documents, man, and they don't want it getting out to the public.
Yeah. I think that, well, not so much that. I think that I think it's a little bit concerning. You know, the fact that prosecution and law enforcement in the area couldn't find this connection. You know, it seems like there's a connection between Bryan Kohberger's one of his Instagram profiles and one of the victims. Now, when I spoke with Kaylee Goncalves, she mentioned to me that before the celebration of life at the end of the year in 2022, before Bryan Kohberger's arrest was made, they were made aware that a person was going to be arrested, and that person was going to be Bryan Kohberger. They looked up Bryan Christopher Kohberger on all social medias and found his, I think it was his WSU or one of his, maybe it was his DeSales email address associated with an account that was connected to Bryan Kohberger, who was following Kaylee and Maddie. Now, you know, when they told me that, they told me this a long time ago. I've reported this since then. I'll be honest with you. Even when she told me that, I was a little bit skeptical that it happened because I honestly assumed that would have been the first few people that they would have gone through, was to see who's following these people on social media prior to their murders. And anybody that is, I'm going to cross-reference with what they drive. And as soon as I saw that this person was operating a white Elantra, the ball would have gone rolling real fast. This guy would have gotten arrested a lot earlier because the evidence that they used to find him, was what? The DNA is what pointed at him, but they couldn't really use the DNA and say, hey, we have this IgG that points back to Bryan Kohberger. They can't use that. They had to build a case, right? So they went out there and they got dad's DNA. They also, looked up his phone pings and all these other things. Well, all those things were accessible at that time as well. In fact, they go into it in the probable cause affidavit that those things were ready and available, especially his studies online and some of the writings that he had online. So this ball could have gotten going a lot sooner. Why do you think they didn't go down this road sooner, Big Blue? Do you think there could be some reasons there? Let's kind of talk about this. I guess put it out there.
I mean, they all had their own profiles and a lot of profiles to go through. And if the families knew about it, somebody knows about it in that office or should have been known about it. But remember, they also hired their own private detective. So maybe he was the one that found out about it, and maybe some of the information wasn't crossed right. So I don't know. We'll find out. But
Maybe.
I did say I was going to drink a beer, but I'm going to drink something different today. I'm going to drink a little bit of a squirt with a little bit of Jim Beam apple.
Nice. Well, enjoy, my man. Enjoy. To me, that tells me a couple different things. It tells me that they were probably preoccupied with other parts of the investigation that were leading them down other routes. One of the biggest arguments for the defense is that they focused in on Bryan Kohberger. He was the sole purpose. They didn't look at anybody else, even though in the own defense's paperwork, they say that the prosecutor, that law enforcement surreptitiously or secretly took a cigarette butt. Remember that? They took a cigarette butt of somebody to test their DNA. And obviously it didn't come back to the match on what's on the sheath. So that tells you that they were investigating others. All right. And so I think that what this means is that that law enforcement was probably following what they had. And it may have been, obviously it didn't sound like they had a lot until they had the IgG back. But to me, it tells me that they were probably, focusing on the Jack Decor, on all these other white Elantras that were out there, or the Kopackas of the world, everybody that came up as a possible person of interest from the public. I think that there is this idea that if it's not spoken about from law enforcement, it didn't happen. Like, for instance, I truly believe that there's a lot of people out there that suspect that they're the only ones that thought of all these other possibilities of people being involved and that police didn't go and clear it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, it's a lot of avenues, and there was a lot of people working that case, so who knows if it went through one desk and not the other, because they're getting so much information. I think if it was on there and maybe it wasn't nothing too suspicious until they got the name, and that's why they didn't look into it. I mean, because these girls probably had a lot of followers on there.
They did have a lot of followers, but but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. All this stuff is new to me. When I was in law enforcement, MySpace was still a thing. So,
imagine if something happens to us and they said it's one of our followers. That's 40,000 people they got to run through.
Right, but did Kaylee, Xana, and Maddie have 40,000 people running through their Instagram and stuff at the time of their death?
They might have.
Now they do, or well more, but at the time of their death, prior to that. And I think that when it came to this interview here between Forensic Frenzy and Andrew Garrett, it sounded like he made the statement that there was a connection there, not so much that it was just one-sided, that one of them followed them back. Now, you can't do that before, or after you've passed, one, and two. I think that would have been something you could have separated. Like, all right, let's see who they're following that follow them. Let's find out who they're following that is not following them, because that could be a reason as well. and vice versa. You know, I would have assumed that their social media contacts would have been like gone through like crazy. Now we had heard rumors that there was, I guess, an officer or somebody stated that there was contact between Bryan Kohberger and one of the victims, but that the victim, there's no way of telling if the victim even saw the messages or any of those type of things. You know, just kind of saw, hey, hey, hey,
Yeah.
you know, and well, question, Blue, would somebody sending out a message, would that constitute as them stalking somebody?
No, not just a plain message, unless it starts getting threatening. Even at that, cyber stalking it takes a while to build a case. Those are some hard cases to build because you're putting yourself out there to somebody to say, hello, hey, you look good, you look pretty, whatever. And that's not stalking, it's a compliment. But when it starts crossing the line, then it turns to stalking, or if it's an everyday thing. But sometimes people put pictures out there and they want all the likes and they want all that stuff. So it depends on what you want out there.
Yeah.
If you don't want that, then don't put anything out there. Like likewise, you know what I mean? Like that they want the likes. But if you got to put it this way, if they had live capability, I think you got to get at least 1,000 followers on Instagram to be able to go live. I think that's quite a bit.
You're right. That is quite a bit. And I'm not sure if they had that capability then or not. That'd be something to find out. And if they did, if they had live capability, then yeah, you're absolutely right. And these girls seem popular. I mean, you probably have all of their sorority sisters and their boyfriends that are probably following each other and things of that nature. I'm sure if we go to their page, if we see that they're following, you know, upwards to a couple hundred or 1,000 people, that's quite a people to go through. You're absolutely right. But I
remember when they released the names, I went through one of their Instagrams. I didn't have all their names, but when they released them, I went through a few. Remember, we were already on this case right when it happened.
Right.
Me, you, and Jaime. I said, well, I have Instagram, and I went through the Instagrams to try to find them, and I couldn't find them. But I only went through like 2. I didn't go through all the Instagrams. And I think Brian's was already blocked by then. I couldn't get into his to find him.
Okay. Yeah. His was gone like right away, but for who it wasn't gone for was the Goncalves family. They were well aware of it. They were well aware of who he was, and they're the ones that told me directly that they had seen his profile. They've even sent me I'm not sure if I can show it, but they sent me this thing that they're that I guess their private eye and stuff that they did some work on the email address and stuff, and it showed, and they sent me a couple of documents that showed who he was following, who he wasn't following, when that Instagram profile was created and where it was created at, and it appeared everything to seem to be pretty accurate as far as it being Bryan Kohberger's. I couldn't tell you how accurate the images I was seeing. I didn't go through the trouble of finding it, but apparently that was sent in through, I believe it was their lawyers and the private attorney that they had or investigated that they had hired. So they strongly suspect that Bryan Kohberger was following at least one, or if not most of the victims outside of Ethan. And so, I mean, it's quite possible. I want to say real quick, Krista Martinez, thank you for becoming the newest member. We appreciate you. We're going to have a members only this weekend. So you became a member just in time.
I said, maybe it was one of those things where they ran it, I want to say that there's a connection at the restaurant, being a vegan restaurant and being one of the few places. And he probably talked to him. And, sometimes I've been at the bar and just talk to people and get their Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, people put it on their cars too and stuff. The Instagram handle is something that goes out pretty crazy. I'm starring some of these questions. Put a couple of stars if you have them. But and I know, Angel, that Mad Greek doesn't show up, isn't vegan, but when you look up vegan on a map, and if you have never been somewhere before, like Pullman, Washington, or Moscow, Idaho, like if you're coming from Pennsylvania, you're probably going to go visit that place at least once, right? It's kind of like when I said, and I know that McDonough, he recently said this on a podcast the other night. Now, I've been saying this since the alibi has come out, that I don't find it, a coincidental that Bryan Kohberger is accused of this crime here in Moscow, but his alibi happens to be where it's been suspected that Ted Bundy dumped his first victim at, which is at the Wawawai Park. Like, I strongly suspect that this guy committed this murder. There's there's a lot of accusations against him. There's a lot of strong evidence, DNA at the scene, purchase of a K-bar knife and K-bar knife sheath receipt from Amazon that neither of those items can be found. You have a vehicle that matches his down to the missing front license plate in and around the area on an icy cold Idaho morning, where you also have Bryan Kohberger's phone. One, you have him out and about at that odd hour, and in that temperature. You have him out and about during that time, during the time of the murders. And not only during the time of the murders is he out and about, but his phone is off. And so, or at least not connected to the network. All those things together, they're saying, hey, we have these strong accusations against you, sir. And the only thing he can come out with is that he was driving around and not going to tell you which direction he went or any of those things, just that at some certain point of the night, not sure when or what time or whatever the case may have been, he somehow maybe perhaps went to Wawawai Park. I don't believe it. I mean, to have such serious accusations and that be your alibi, it's pretty weak,
Yeah, man, I agree. At the point where, like, if it was me being accused and I went for a drive, be like, nope, I turned here, I went there. This is exactly where I remember going that night. Because he didn't say he went drinking that night. He said he went out for a drive. That means your memory should still reflect where you went.
Right, exactly. And he put himself by himself and in the car alone. So, yeah. Come on now, buddy. So, those things, when he came out with that alibi that he was there, I was like, this dude, in my mind, like, is there possible that something comes up that says it's not him? Yeah, but for something like that to happen, like for it to fit logically, it would have to be somebody very close to Bryan Kohberger and somebody very close to the victims who hated all of them. You know what I'm saying? Or at least one of the victims and Bryan Kohberger. And knew Bryan Kohberger's routine, route, timing, he was going to turn off his phone, those type of things, and committed this crime based off of the fact that Bryan Kohberger's height, weight, and car he could match those things and take his DNA into the crime scene. I mean, the likelihood of somebody being able to do that is just so ridiculous. At the end of the day, it's a jury is going to try this man, and what they need to figure out is if there's any, if this is proof beyond reasonable doubt, and that's reasonable doubt, not all doubt. Come up with a reasonable story that comes up with an answer to all of those questions, and then maybe we can, I might start to think about considering changing my mind. But when it's always the same stuff, like, oh, they framed him with absolutely no evidence of a frame job or any of those type of things, and in fact, it being 100% impossible, just solely because of the fact that it was the state of Idaho, the forensic lab from Idaho, the forensic team, the one that collected the knife sheaths and the ones that collected the DNA and entered it into CODIS, which is a national database for law enforcement. It's not like they entered it into their teacher's classroom that's not locked and somebody can go in there and kind of get an eraser and erase the DNA sequence. It's a lot more difficult than that. To go into CODIS, a national database, and change the DNA sequence at a later date to reflect the person that you're trying to frame. It's impossible. Okay? Like all these other wild, like I got somebody say, the reason I don't watch you guys anymore is because you're not open to the possibility of the other side. And to me, is like, in order to believe the other side at this point, I'd have to be believing in things that aren't real. Now tell me something that's real and tangible and that's reasonable, and maybe perhaps I'll bring it up to the attention of everybody. But until then, it's pretty obvious that this guy did it. And if he is telling everybody that he was at Wawawai Park, the one place where Ted Bundy is supposedly have started his possible murdering spree, that's crazy, man. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, wait. Ted Bundy, there's no proof that he killed this person, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter whether or not if Ted Bundy committed this murder or not. It's whether or not Bryan Kohberger suspects if Ted Bundy committed this crime. If he does, and he's paying homage to him by saying that's where he was during the time of this murder, That's sick, dude.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be able to go through his history or search history and find out if he's even researched that place. Or maybe he read it in a book one time when he was doing his criminal background. Like, I'm pretty sure he's done some reports on murders and the type of, to get the degrees he's had to do a few criminal justice classes to get information like that. So maybe he was paying homage to go visit that area. But he's also been there during the day too, like he said, because he had photos during the day, but not at night or something like that.
Well, no, I think he had photos, but the thing is, what they said was that he had photos or whatever the case may have been, including in November. But what they don't say was including on November 13th, right? They talk about the photos that he's taken, talk about the hikes, talk about the pictures, including in November. So all the way up into the point where Bryan Kohberger allegedly committed this crime, maybe even afterwards, he took pictures while he was out there, except for the night in question. Don't you find that suspicious, Blue?
That is pretty suspicious because if he was out there, if he was truly out there and he took photos on his phone, they'll be time stamped, date stamped, and that would get him off. He wouldn't have to be sitting behind bars right now. And they don't have that evidence.
No, they don't. Let's see.
Or they haven't presented that evidence if they have it. I mean, but wouldn't you want to be a free person, not be behind bars if you know you're not guilty?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and I don't think that's a thing that I think it's obvious that if this guy was truly thought he was innocent, there'd be more of a push, right, to get this thing over and done with as soon as possible, to get him free. I know there's been other people that have said, hey, I've been in that situation. Not necessarily. I know one of our good friends, A.R. Hayes, said that he spent 7 years, on trial waiting for something in jail. But he also said he had other things that he had done and committed, and that he was also in jail for those things. So it's not like he was, it was either he's in jail for this crime or he's going to be free. You know what I'm saying? In this scenario, that is the situation. It's either Bryan Kohberger is in jail for this crime or he goes home. There is no other crimes that are associated that we're aware of that they're charging him, at least at this point. We've heard some speculation and rumors that he is being looked at by the FBI in reference to breaking into WSU and the chem lab and potentially stealing chemicals. And the thought is maybe perhaps he was going to try to build a bomb. I've heard.
What if the chemicals he stole were acids to dissolve the weapon?
It could be true. That could be true. He could have gotten acid to destroy the weapon. I heard from another very close source that I trust that it was luminol, blood cleaner, and some other things that he was going through at the WSU crime or at the lab, which is one of the reasons why WSU might end up getting sued when everything's all said and done because of their failure, or let me put it this way, they unwillingly, unknowingly, and probably negligently assisted in this crime. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't something that they purposefully did. They allowed access to Bryan Kohberger certain things. And perhaps, possibly, if he used those certain things to either commit the crime or try to get away with it or elude investigation, then I think they could be in some serious trouble there. Especially if they were aware that certain items were missing at a certain time and maybe perhaps didn't report it or whatever. It's one of those things, one or the other. So, those are the things that we're aware of, but I mean, at the end of the day, those things haven't come forth as they haven't charged him with anything like that. So at this point, it's just mere conversation. You know what I mean, Blue?
Yeah. And earlier, I just wanted to point out that somebody asked if they can be on the show. I think every once in a while we hold, Friday you had an open mic day kind of deal.
Yeah.
Where everybody can show up if they wanted, and if you want to be on the show, just email the Drunk Turkey Show, and then we'll see what information you got or what your side, and maybe we'll have you on here.
100%. But yeah, no, we're not going to be doing that tonight. I'm also going to let you guys know on Friday night, we're probably not going to have a show just solely because of the fact that it is football Steelers will be playing the Houston Texans on Friday night. If you want to catch me on Friday night, I'll be talking about the game, or maybe even talking about the game or calling the game on my other channel called State of the Steelers. Make sure you guys go and subscribe, watch, do the whole 9 yards there as well. So I got sent this from one of our mods. Let me pull this up real quick. And this is what they were able to find Bryan Kohberger's stuff from. So this is true. This was his Twitter, his aliases, his email address. And I think it was one of these email addresses. I think it was this one, the sales email address that was associated with the Instagram profile that was following Kaylee and Maddie that Christy and Steve had sent me. So take it for what it is. I got, when it came out that he wasn't following them on social media, I thought that was more believable because, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I felt that if he, was doing this, he would have gotten caught a lot sooner. But then again, as we start to dwindle through the evidence, when we find out, man, this guy made so many stupid mistakes, following them online is just why would that surprise me? He took his phone with him. He left a knife sheath under the body of a victim with his DNA on there. He wore a jumpsuit, and granted, he got rid of the jumpsuit, but decided to keep the tag and the receipt for it.
Yeah, no, that's crazy, man. But that's the thing is, like, if you order it online, you have to ship it from somewhere, and they're gonna get your card number and they're gonna get your info. Now, if you make up all the info and get one of those prepaid cards, then you might be a smarter person. But he didn't. He ordered it from his own Amazon account, supposedly.
It doesn't matter. No, he didn't order it from his own Amazon account.
No,
No, it wasn't his.
I thought it was an Amazon account they found.
It was an account they found associated with him, but it wasn't. How can I put it? I don't want to get anything out there before it's too soon.
Okay,
if you wanted to buy somebody something for their birthday, and you didn't know what to buy them, you get them what?
A random gift,
or a card. There you go. That's what I would do too. So I don't know. I'll leave that at that. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something like that on when it comes down to trial. You heard it here first. So a little heads up.
I normally give liquor bottles for birthdays. So see, there's one of them right there.
There it is.
But they give are bigger than that.
Yeah, because let's just say that that's the case, right? If he did purchase it from, a gift card, those gift cards have to be purchased from somewhere, right? And those places where you purchase them usually have cameras where you pay out at.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They also have, at the store, whoever bought it has to use a credit card to buy it or cash. Yeah, but they do have cameras.
They do. In fact, they, what's up, Jason? Apparently the connection is that he was following him on social media, allegedly. And apparently it wasn't just that he was following them. One or more was following him back. Meaning that this following happened before November 13th, right? Because I think that's a big component, right? When did the following happen? If Bryan Kohberger followed these, ladies and Ethan or whoever after the murders, so did a lot of people. But he followed them before, and his defense attorney says that there's no connection. If they find this has to be a connection. What are your thoughts now on the defense, as far as what they say? Are you going to start to believe everything they say still?
Sometimes it's one of those things where you're pouring more gasoline on fire when they keep opening their mouth. So, and the problem is their client has to be truthful to them. Yeah. And maybe he never told them, hey, I did follow him on this. Or maybe he thinks he's smart enough and said, they're not going to find it. They won't know who I am on there.
Well, apparently they didn't find it, which is so freaking frustrating, man, that it took Forensic Frenzy. And for those that are just catching the show, we were supposed to have Forensic Frenzy on the show. She had an interview with Andrew Garrett from Garrett Discoveries. And they recently were talking about how Bryan Kohberger's defense team is wrong on a lot of things, including the cell data and stuff, like extremely wrong. And one of the things that made the most sense, right, was the fact that he even brought up, he's like, who cares about that? It's about the chip inside the phone. It's the GPS that got it. And they have Bryan Kohberger's phone. Now, a lot of people are like, well, why aren't they using it? Well, at this point, the reason why we haven't heard about the GPS and all that other stuff is because we have to remember at what process we are. We are in the process of the defense arguing their points for things to be thrown out. We're not in the process of the prosecution proving their case. And so at this point in time, all we're going to hear about are the things that the defense are going to try to throw out and all their crap, right? And when it comes down to trial, we're going to hear about the other stuff. Now, I've said it for a long time. When it comes to the arguments from the defense, whether it be grand jury, like, come on now. They thought that the statute of limits, or that it needs to be at beyond reasonable doubt at the grand jury. That's their argument. That was their argument. I thought that was a weak ass argument. And now their argument is, oh, the cast, when there's GPS data. If there's GPS data, his phone was on. Where's the frick does his phone say he was at with the GPS data? And if they're not wanting to argue that, what does that tell you, Big Blue?
That there's nothing to argue there.
Yeah,
you know, tells me that they can't argue it.
Case. They can only argue what they can only argue what they have, and if they're arguing things like this, they got a weak ass case. It is freaking weak as hell. They have no defense for this man. And the only defense they have is that he was driving around going in no direction at no time or date. They have no idea how his DNA got underneath the body of a victim. And it's just all bad luck.
Yeah, somebody asked about laying down. Yeah, I didn't feel like moving all the stuff on the desk today. I've been getting ready to sell my house. So I moved all my stuff. So I decided to get the lap tray and put my laptop on it and lay down and do the show today.
Yeah, you need it, man. You need it. Relax. Connor asks, what were the findings? I've never heard about this. So basically what was said was there was a couple of things. They were looking at Andrew Garrett was actually, let me pull this up so that way everybody knows who I'm talking about. And it's crazy how like a lot of people were looking at this and like, they're trying to play this down, but in fact, the crazy thing about it is this is Andrew Garrett. He's the CEO from Garrett Discovery, and they do sell service work and stuff like that. They helped, I think, catch bin Laden, and that type of work. He is far more experienced and far more of an expert than Cy will ever be. And in his testimony, the first thing he says is that Cy was completely wrong, and the defense basically don't know what they're doing when it comes to looking at these things. Well, not necessarily. Let me reframe that. What he said was that law enforcement officers only get trained for 2 days, which when he was talking about this, all I could think about was what Maury was saying on his testimony, that he went for a 2-day training, and all they do is copy and paste things. They're not really experts. And so when he was talking about Cy, I also took it as the same thing can go for the prosecution and Detective Maury and Detective Payne and all the stuff that they did when it came to the cast. So I didn't see what he was saying as solely being 100% negative towards the prosecution. I mean, the defense. I saw it being a negative towards both sides, to be honest with you. And so, but what he had said was that, the problem is that some of these guys that are officers, they learn bad stuff and then they go and try to teach bad stuff. And basically what this guy did was he took the bad stuff that he learned as a cop and implemented into his stuff now. And apparently that his technology has been thrown out of court several times and it's not reliable. Nobody uses his software, yada, yada, yada. And so what he was saying was that, kind of explaining some of the things that honestly I heard from Cy saying, hey, without the time data, the test data, you can't tell this, you can't tell that. You can get an accurate location of where he was, but to say if he was on the corner of X street at X time is almost impossible or whatever, right? And so he went through this whole thing, and I think it was like almost 40 minutes where I honestly saw it also in favor of the defense here because the prosecution was utilizing the same stuff. And then he started talking about the chip in the phone, where that's what really makes a difference. And in my opinion, I think that's the case. And if Bryan Kohberger's phone was on those 12 times or connected to the tower, those 12 times that they suspect him of stalking or whatever the case may have been, then that means his phone was on. If his phone was on, that means that those apps that were tracking his GPS were on. And that was tracking him continually. So they were going to know exactly down to a meter where he was. It's something called Gladiator, I believe. If you're not familiar with it, I'd go look it up in the Alex Murdaugh case. It was pretty damning in that case as well. And so the fact is that
that's the only way they were able to convict him was with that case. Was that info?
It was a huge component. It was that and his voice on the Snapchat.
On the Snapchat video.
So the other thing that Garrett Discovery does is they'll do some social media connecting, so to speak. And they ran Bryan Kohberger's name, his email addresses, his aliases, and they were able to find a connection between Bryan Kohberger and at least one of the victims, where it appears to be, I mean, he didn't flat out say it, but it sounds like he's saying that there was not just a following from Bryan Kohberger to one of the victims, but a potential following back from one of the victims to Bryan Kohberger, which is interesting because there's only one, you can't do that after you pass. You can't follow Bryan Kohberger once you're gone. So this kind of tells you that there was a connection at some point before the murders too, which is important because like I mentioned before, a lot of people were following the victims after the murders. What I'd want to know is if they're following them before. And what does that do to the credibility of the defense's testimonies or the defense when they say there's no connection? And now before even trial starts, before anything starts, while we're in the pre-hearing phase, we obviously see that there's a connection. I think it says a lot.
Yeah, man, that is pretty damning. And somebody said when they're asking questions, how come we're not answering them yet? We're saving them because there's so many questions out there. So we get to them in between our conversation. So we'll get to your question. I marked some of the star ones to read later on.
100%. The change of venue, I think, isn't for another week or two.
Yeah.
Oh, Jen is asked if she can come on the show sometime. Yes, Jen, I've been trying to get you to come on the show for some time. We'll get that set up maybe for the weekend or something. He was aware of the girls somehow. Mad Greek Instagram. He knew exactly what room he was headed to. That's 100% true. 100% true. 100% true. Do y'all think the trial will happen next June? I don't know, man. If I was the defense, this is me being the defense, and my goal was to get this case outside of Moscow. I wanted to get it moved, change of venue, right? If I felt that I had no chance of winning here because the evidence is so strong and conviction is so high, as far as the person's, not necessarily like conviction as far as like conviction rates. I'm talking about the conviction of the population. And so, I would try to not have it go during the summer. I would try to either force it to happen earlier or force it to happen a little bit later when the prosecution doesn't want it to happen. So the prosecution wants it to happen in the summer because of logistics. They want to make sure that the high school and the college, isn't affected by all the media and the persons that are going to be traveling into Idaho as well. I honestly think they probably got a better chance of doing this in the winter where things are probably a little bit icier. Not many people are going to want to travel there, stuff like that during those conditions. I mean, you're going to get a crowd regardless, but I don't think it's going to be as big of a crowd as you're going to get during the summertime. But if I was them, I would try to move it outside of the summer and then argue that just because there's a high school and a college there that are attending classes doesn't mean they should violate his rights for a trial in a fair amount of time. Granted, he did waive his speedy trial. That doesn't mean that the prosecution has, forever to try him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Sorry. I'm back in my computer chair because it's getting a little tired being down.
Mm-hmm. You still need to use an Amazon account to use your gift card. You still do, but you don't have to use your Amazon account or one that says Bryan Kohberger per se. If you're using a gift card, you can create a completely fake alias. Let's see. Sounds like late, but I have insider info. Nah, not necessarily. Well, I mean, a little bit. I've had this information for a long time. The fact that Bryan Kohberger was allegedly following the victims. Now, I had no way of telling of when they were following the victims, right? I had no idea of knowing, if it happened before or after the murders. But if what Garrett is saying is true, that they followed him back, then this is a clear indication that, what do you call it? That this happened obviously before the murders. This also could be another way he kept track of them. I believe it's an Instagram account is what we're all said to believe. I don't know how Instagram is. I know on Snapchat, you can see somebody's location and where they're at. It's pretty crazy. Oh, what's going on? Lots of love from South, love back from the United States. We appreciate you.
Yep, and that's a nice picture of a dog.
That is a nice picture. Let's see. So now the not the crazy thing, but the thing is the fact about it that they prevented Miss Forensic Frenzy from coming onto the show. So this is the other thing that happened. They prevented her from coming onto the show. And apparently what it sounds like is that this information is now in the right hands and is being investigated, which is why she couldn't come on the show and talk about it. She will be coming on the show as soon as she can and clears everything up. So I do want to also specify that she's waiting to hear back from, I guess it's like an attorney or whatever, and then she's going to be on the show with what exactly she can talk about, because our conversation wasn't only going to be on Bryan Kohberger. It was going to, or this interview necessarily, it was going to be on her becoming a creator and things of that nature. So it was a little bit more in depth. And also she, in her video, and she's put out a few other videos, I think I need to specify this. She's not claiming to have discovered any connection, just the fact that in Andrew Garrett's preliminary deal or whatever search, that this is what the outcome was. He hadn't verified it. He hadn't gone in there and done the things necessary to be 100% sure. But it seems like those things are now being looked into. I think that if there was no validity into it, it wouldn't be looked into. What do you think, Blue?
Yeah, I mean, that is true. If there wasn't something that they think they might have missed on the prosecution side, then they wouldn't have stopped them from coming on here. They would have ignored it. But if it's something that, hey, this might actually be something that we're missing, and this might actually help our case, we need to get a hold of this person fast. And it's crazy how, sometimes that happens. I mean, that's how some other cases get solved, is by, internet sleuth, like they like to call it sometimes, but we get some information that they don't get. They don't have the manpower or the hours, because some people blame the police for not getting all the information, but sometimes, like in a big city like ours, they get a new case every day. There's a new shooting, a new killing every day.
Twice a day, man. It's crazy out here. What are you talking about?
I know. I mean, that's how crazy it is around here. So they get detectives, and they get, they get put on new cases all the time, and that's why some things fall through the crack.
Yeah. So Violet asked, where is this info coming from again? So this info is coming from Garrett Discovery. He came out on Forensic Frenzy's YouTube channel, and on this channel he spoke about how he was contacted by Ann Taylor and the defense team. They wanted him to look at the phone pings and things of that nature beforehand, and they did so, and they refused to work for the prosecution. He said for money. It was one of the reasons why, and another reason he said was when they looked at the phone pings, they didn't agree with what they were trying to say. And so after the fact, he put it upon himself to utilize his little search engine tool thing that he has. I'm not very familiar with it, and I'm not the expert, but he puts in the information, the aliases and things like that, and it finds connections to profiles. And apparently they were able to link a connection with Bryan Kohberger's email to a profile that was connected and following one or more of the victims, and one or more of the victims allegedly was following him back, is what it sounded like. Now they're going to be investigating this to make sure that it's 100% accurate, because I think accuracy is important. You know, preliminary, it looks like it seems to be the case. And when I spoke with Christy and Steve, they told me before Bryan Kohberger was arrested, so before anybody found out who he was, they were told of him before the celebration of life that they had towards the end of the year of 2022. They went up there, they spoke, they did their thing for the celebration of life. Well, let me rephrase. What she told me was that they got his name before they went to the celebration of life. They pulled up his Instagram and social media platforms and took screenshots of everything. Afterwards, those profiles were gone. They were no longer up and running. They were nowhere to be. Fortunately, they had the screenshots. And those screenshots, they were able to connect Bryan Kohberger to some of the victims that he was following them. I don't know if they ever or never did search to see who was following him back. I do know that, well, let me rephrase this. I do know that there was a few that were following him back, but when they were following him back, I don't know. Because I just find this weird, man, that they couldn't connect him a long time ago, man, by this. But fortunately, he made a lot of dumb mistakes.
Yeah, it's a lot of crazy mistakes. And I did put them more starred. So let me see. There was one that.
Mm-hmm.
Get it out. It was this one.
Were their Instagram public? I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, when the first case came out, that's where I got some of the photos from. Remember when we did our first cases to do the intros? We got the photos from their Instagram, the ones that the news was using. And then after a while, their Instagrams went private or got closed.
Jason Truth, you asked me if you said if I'm right, then a certain other creator must be wrong. I have debunked every single thing that creator has said with just logic and common sense. I'll just leave it at that.
And the other thing was not all the profiles were when the names were released. Not all of them were public. Some of them were private. I remember looking to try to get more photos, and all we can get were the ones that they had posted on the news. You know, them right there. You know, like the one that's behind them taking the pictures in the patio.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty much the only pictures that were on there. And then, like, I guess they were on a boat on some of the pictures. They were like on a fishing trip or something, or skiing trip or something.
Yeah. Connor says, I need to watch this before it comes down. I recommend it. We put it in our channel on the community page, because once we figured out that this is an interview that was going to go down, I wanted everybody to see this interview. So you can go check it out. Mary C says, interview was interesting. So glad you're talking about it. Thank you. Angel says, I respect C. Ray. He seems very professional, in my opinion. I mean, you can be very professional and very wrong at the same time. You know, being professional doesn't mean you're right. And I think he knows that he's in for it. I mean, wasn't it Ann Taylor that said that at this hearing that we were going to hear testimony from Cy Ray that the Elantra that is passing by in front of the Floyd cannabis shop wasn't Bryan Kohberger and it couldn't have been him? Well, according to what we know now, that some documents or some evidence was released to the defense just before his testimony, and that never came up. So either he forgot or the defense forgot to bring up that important piece, or it no longer fit the evidence anymore, because the evidence that they got, as he said, that he had the right to change his mind. Like, he didn't look very comfortable up there, to be honest with you. He looked very uncomfortable. He didn't look comfortable there. I've never heard any expert say I can change my mind to this, that, and a third. And especially to say that this could be very damning for Mr. Kohberger. Why would it be very damning for Mr. Kohberger if you swear you know where he was at a certain time and it is impossible for him to be somewhere else? Why would you need to, have the room for there to, or the right to reserve that you're going to change it if you know that he was at another place and it's impossible to get there from there? That just tells me that the perspective of the person who is saying those things, that he knows that he was somewhere else and that he couldn't have been there, is probably wrong too. But yeah, Cyrus, I don't think he's a disrespectful person. I don't fault him for trying to, be the witness for the defense team. I mean, that's what they're paying him to do. It's his job. Just like I don't fault Ann Taylor for defending the guy. That's her job too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it was assigned to her. Somebody's got to defend them. Somebody's got to try to give them a fair trial and a fair case. So that's part of their jobs. I mean, sometimes the defense attorney is always the hated one because they're defending somebody who potentially did something bad.
Mm-hmm. And Chris, which follow-up video, the one that where I discussed earlier, I'm not sure if you were watching the whole show, but I talked about how some of the information wasn't very favorable for the prosecution either, and especially when it came to the cast information. This guy didn't just bury Cyrus in the words that he was saying that, hey, these cops go, do training for 2 days and come back because they can copy and paste things. That's what Detective Maury said too. So this wasn't just one-sided, but what he did say and ended up saying was the most important thing about the entire thing is the chip and the GPS, because that's going to tell you a lot more and a lot more accurate. And so when you look at what the defense is trying to do and you're looking at their strategy, so to speak, and their strategy is attacking the cast, something that they needed before the arrest, gives a crap about that. It's what you need after. I mean, that's kind of like somebody arguing about Bryan Kohberger's dad's DNA when you have Bryan Kohberger's DNA. Who cares about his dad's DNA? It's his DNA. They got it already. So it is what, or the car, when people were like, oh man, in late November, they thought it was in late November of 2022, they thought it was a 2014 to 2016 or 2013 to 2011 Hyundai Elantra. Obviously, the car morphed because now it's a 2014 and they manipulated the video or something. It's bull crap. It doesn't matter what they thought. It's today. What do they think now? Can Bryan Kohberger's defense team go and say that white Elantra that is on the King Queen Road intersection from the 1112 King Road screw on camera that's pointing right at that intersection, can that car be excluded of being a 2014 to 16 Elantra? And if it can't, come on now, man, come on.
Yeah, I mean they have the work put out for them for any case, but this case especially because their client's not giving a lot of information, and because there's not much you can give, because I think he's gonna plead the fifth all the way through just to see if anything can get thrown out, and that's gonna be their strategy.
Didn't the sister of the victim say in an interview they were able to look at her Instagram messages after their deaths? Wouldn't that imply the family had access to the Insta accounts after the deaths? I don't know if they actually said that. I believe what they said was they went through the phone records of the folks that they that she had contacted and were calling them to kind of get an idea of what was going on. I don't recall them, Christy, ever saying anything about having access to anything like social media accounts. I can go back to my text message, but I'm fairly 100% positive, and I'll double check. But to my knowledge, they were very limited in the things that they had access to when it came to Kaylee and her phone and stuff like that. They didn't have the phone. Police had the phone. All they had were phone records, and they were able to call a lot of people that either called her phone or she called or texted in and out. They weren't able to see what the text messages were, just that there was numbers associated with messages coming in and out. And what time these messages and calls were coming in and out of. That's about it. There was nothing of that nature. Let's see. I have no doubt he is guilty. He was obsessed with one of the girls. I'm thinking yes, and the defense will do anything to stall the trial. But in my opinion, no matter where he is, he will be found guilty. I agree. I think that at the end of the day, the evidence is what the evidence is. Whether he's in Moscow or Latah County, or he goes to Ada County or any other county, at the end of the day, Bryan Kohberger's phone was off during the time of the murders. It was a specific time of the murders on an icy, overcast, freezing night where while he's already admitted that he was in the vehicle by himself throughout the entire time, so nobody else had his car, nobody else was inside his car, nobody else had any of those things. These murders happen, right? So let's just break it down from the bare simple, from the beginning, right? We are to believe that Bryan Kohberger is innocent. We are to believe that on the night that Bryan Kohberger goes out at this odd hour and this odd time during these inclement weather, that there is a quadruple homicide happening nearby. What are the chances when you go out that that's even happening on its own? Now, those chances increase or decrease when we find out that the person that's committing this crime is out there driving the same car as Bryan Kohberger or yourself. Let's just put you in Bryan Kohberger's shoes. Do your chances of you doing the crime increase or decrease if the person that is out there committing this crime while you're by yourself at this odd random time also drives your same type of vehicle? Now, what are the chances that that same vehicle that drives similar to yours is also missing a front license plate? And what are the chances that all this is happening while you turn off your phone? And then what are the chances that this person who is your same height, your same weight, is out and about in a car that's very similar to yours down to the front license plate while you're driving around and you don't know where you're at and you don't have any proof of where you're at, no phone service, no nothing. This guy also has your DNA in the car on the knife sheath that he's going to leave underneath the body of a victim. I mean, those numbers have to be a strong. I mean, I think there would be more likely of a chance that the DNA belonged to somebody else other than Bryan Kohberger. Was it 1 in 5 octillion? Then all of those things come into play at the same time on the same night.
Yeah, man. It's just, one of those things that DNA is so specific. You can't cheat it. You know what I mean? Everybody's DNA is different.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, it's not just the DNA, but it's everything else that goes along with it. Also, guys, for those that are our members, we do have a Discord. Make sure you go to the community tab, check on the community tab. I've put the link for the Discord. I'll probably put it again after this show. So it'll be a brand new one. In fact, as soon as I get off here, I'll go into Discord, invite everybody again on the community tab. For those that are members, conversate with myself and everybody else that are in there. It's a great time. Thank you, Warning Label Nina, for reminding me. I appreciate that. Why can't I just play this video? Because it's an hour long. And if you want to go watch the video, the link is there. I'm just going to touch on the important parts. Damien comes in with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Damien. We appreciate you. Thank you. I'm gonna leave that up there for a minute. But what about you? What do you think? Do you think that there's any? What do you think, Blue? Like, if you were to play devil's advocate, where do you? How would you argue this? That they're now investigating this potential connection between Bryan Kohberger and the victims. What would your statement be like to this? How would you rebut this?
All you would have to say is, "Oh well, I went to go eat somewhere at, I would say, the restaurant if I was him, and say had a great conversation with these girls, and we got Instagram transferred. No, I was paying. I'm lying." But it's one of those things where I'm not sure if we could do it now, but maybe here's one theory: is he went somewhere and saw one of these girls, or maybe he went to eat there, or maybe he went to their website to look for places that serve vegan food, and their pictures is one of the waiters. But if you're tagged on Instagram on there, it used to click your name used to pop up if you were in the picture.
Yeah.
I don't think it does that no more, but it used to.
It did.
Yeah, I haven't really gone on my Instagram in a while. So.
Skater Gal says, Daniel Garrett said that he didn't believe MPD pings were correct. What do you make of that? Yeah, he did say that. He also said that who cares about the pings? It's the GPS chip in the phone. He even said that. He said that the reason why that they didn't cross Cy Ray was because, and I 100% agree with him, Is because if the defense plans on using him at trial, they're going to embarrass the living hell out of him. That's why he was so uncomfortable. Once he goes up, they're going to be like, all right, Mr. Cyrate, what do you think about these pings? And where is that more impactful? In a pretrial hearing where, it's in front of the judge and you and I, or in front of the jury where it makes a difference and their decision counts? What do you think, Blue?
I think it's a lot of information that we're going to hear and listen to in the next couple of court hearings, hopefully, and they clear up some stuff, and maybe they will release that there is a connection out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that'd be pretty damning. It's one of those things where I don't think they can release much right now because he's still not on trial for the case.
Right, which is why they're kind of stopping her from talking about it, and they're doing their investigations and stuff.
Yeah.
But all right, I got some more of these starred. I'm going to answer these, and then we'll probably calling it a show. So let's see. Is Garrett allowed to be telling us this? Why not? I think that the thing he's not allowed to say is how the defense plans on using the evidence. In fact, I think Forensic came out talking about NDAs and things of that nature, and the things that he signed, he's allowed to talk about the evidence. He's not allowed to talk about, maybe not necessarily the evidence, but the information. Let me put it that way. He's allowed to talk about the information, but he's not allowed to talk about how Ann Taylor plans on using the information. So yeah, he every right to say these things. I was watching some of the tribute videos of the victims, which I didn't realize how big Ethan really was. It begged the question, why couldn't Ethan overpower BK? He was caught off guard. Yeah, and a 7-inch knife. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, I've seen some very, that knife can really make things equal up. Plus, Bryan Kohberger wasn't a small guy himself. I mean, he was running a mile in 6 minutes, according to his own running app that he was doing there in Pullman. So he was physically active. He was able and capable of doing this. Plus, Ethan it's 4:00 in the morning. He was drinking that night at the Sigma Chi party. He's probably asleep, probably woken up by surprise. The fact that there's no DNA under the nails of any of the victims or anything like that, or hair or anything like this left behind, from the assailant, tells me that they were all caught off guard and by surprise. You know what I mean? Those are some things you can't change. You can't change the fact that there wasn't those things. And
I think it's one of those things where if he was fully awakened, there would have been more of a struggle. But it's one of those things where I've seen it where in some videos, where the knife hits the right spot and the person goes down right away, or they might be able to take 3 or 4 steps and collapse. Yeah, it's one of those things where I think we shared a video one time of the guy trying to rob a pawn shop or something. The guy pulls out a big knife and stabs him right in the chest, and then he probably turns around the corner. He says, I'm gonna die," and he just dies right there on the floor. Yeah, took maybe 3 steps from when that happened.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think a lot of people watch too much Rambo or something, and they see these guys that get shot or kicked or like stabbed in the neck, and they're still moving. It's not real, guys. Daniel and Blue, if Bryan did get a hold of luminol, do you think he sprayed it all over his car to make sure he got the blood out? I would assume so. Do you think this intense speculation by YouTube creators will affect the trial? No. I mean, the only way that it'll affect the trial is if there's some mob again, like in the Karen Reed case, going out. I think that was affected pretty bad. I didn't watch the entire thing. I don't know what happened or what didn't happen, but I did hear from the brother of the victim, and I see a lot of freaking sick people attacking him, which is disgusting on its own, to attack somebody, whose brother passed away. Well, anyways, I mean, to hear what Karen Reed called and said to him, right after the death of his brother, something to the effect hey, we're never going to see or talk to each other again. Let's just remember the bad times. It's pretty effed up, and apparently there was some other stuff that didn't come out in that case too, that made it seem like she probably ended up maybe not killing him on purpose. But I don't know. I mean, she even said, I think at the beginning, that it was an accident. And even her lawyer said it was an accident. That this was an accident, that it wasn't intentional. It wasn't intentional. And then at some point, they decided to change their story to that this guy got beat up inside of the house when there was no evidence that he ever went inside the house. Now, don't get me wrong. Proctor shouldn't be a cop. That guy is a piece of crap and deserves everything that's coming to him. But at the same time, I think she got away with killing somebody. And, I think there's a lot of people who are happy about that, which is disgusting on its own too. But outside of that happening, I don't think this is going to.
I don't think so either. I mean, look at the Gabby Petito case. There was a lot of coverage on that, and they ended up solving the case. So, I don't know. I think it would affect more, kind of like the other case that we follow, the
Richard Allen,
when they leaked the information from the case. Now that would affect the case, but
it hasn't.
But it doesn't. It hasn't.
No, I mean, there's places like in Florida where they tell you a lot of the evidence and don't affect the case. So no, I don't think it's going to affect the case whatsoever. At the end of the day, the evidence is what the evidence is, and if you just look at the defense's weak ass case and the arguments that they have, it just spells out weak. Mark says, and I think we're going to probably end it on this: Garrett is a tech forensic expert on national security level caliber. He takes down CAS training as half-assed and explains how BK could ping off that tower while in Pullman. Yeah, that's the other thing too. When and I know there's a lot of folks out there that are on YouTube that think that, because they watch a video or whatever, there's some sort of expert in law enforcement or cell activity or whatever the case may be. It's very reminding. It reminds me a lot of like the movie Jingle All the Way, where you have Sinbad and you have Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie. And in the movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to try to buy a toy, and they don't let him get into the toy because the toy store's closed. They start pushing him back. Sinbad lets him cut in line. And during that conversation, Sinbad goes, "You know what this is all about, right? This is about toy cartels and this, that, and the third." And he goes, he's like, "I'm right in it, man. I took a semester of psychology in junior college." It's usually those that know the least that try to talk the most when it comes to certain things that they don't know about. And when it comes to like the cell phone pings and things like that, this guy right here, Andrew Garrett, he's like a freaking heart surgeon. And whether it's Detective Maury or Cyray, you're probably looking at CNAs compared to what this guy is if you're looking in the medical field, which is nothing bad about being a CNA, but can't compare knowledge from a certified nurse assistant to a declarated heart surgeon. Two different things. You know what I mean, Blue?
Yeah, I mean, you can say that, but then sometimes heart surgeons specialize in one specific part of the body, but they know a lot.
Right. Well, here's the thing. He specifies specifically in cell data and things of that nature. Yeah. That's like a CNA going to a heart surgeon and saying, "Hey, I think you were wrong about this guy's pulmonary or whatever you want to call it disease. I think he had this
cardiology."
Yeah. I think you're wrong about that, sir. I think it was his ventricle in this one. I think that person would get a look of 1,000. If they came back saying, "Hey, I took 6 hours of cardiology in my CNA class."
I did my. Hey, don't be laughing, okay?
Nah, dude, I'm just talking about how some people that's literally how they sound. Like I was watching these other people that were talking about, there was an expert that was saying something, and some tool in the live chat said, "You know what, sir? I think you got it wrong on this one, Mr. Expert." I couldn't help but laugh. I'm like, man, this tool probably at home sitting in his grandma's basement, eating a box of chicken and some ice cream there during the day too, when he's supposed to be at work. And
this is how I'm learning the heart. Oh, you can't see it. Dang it. It's a coloring book.
It's a coloring book. It's a coloring book.
Yeah, that's how you learn the heart.
Yeah, but I'm glad that Garrett Discovery came out. This is how he's an expert, because the defense team reached out to him first. They reached out to him before they reached out to Cyray, and he turned them down. You know what I mean? You know how I know that happened? Because if they reached out to Cyray first and he didn't turn them down, why would they reach out to this guy? Right? I mean, let's do some logical thinking, common sense. If they reached out to Cyray and Cyray said, "Yes, I'll do it," then they wouldn't be reaching out to anybody else. So the fact that Cyray did it and they reached out to him tells you they reached out to this guy first. They trusted his opinion first. They wanted his expertise. And he said no.
Oh man,
Well, guys,
I just
go ahead.
wanted to say, all jokes aside, this anatomy coloring workbook is actually pretty good. Helps you memorize the parts.
Hey, Blue, you might be memorizing those parts, bro, but I don't want you doing no dang. You know, if I ever need one of those sleeves on the arteries and stuff to open up if I ever have a clogging,
Yeah,
you can keep your coloring books, my man. I'm going to the surgeon.
but I know where it connects. My
Right.
coloring book told me.
And I'm not saying that nurses don't know some things more than surgeons. What I'm talking about is the specific thing that they specialize in, right?
I'm joking.
No. I'm talking about Leslie and Billy. I'm talking about the specific thing they specialize. You know, I mean, there's a possibility a nurse could know one or two more things more than a doctor that specializes significantly or specifically on the heart. You know, if there's something else, but I'm talking about this guy. That's what his specialty is. That's his specialty. And so, but go and see that nurse. I'll take the doctor. Let's see who lives longer.
It's one of his thing is go see the podiatrist for your chest pain. Okay, that's what he's trying to say. The podiatrist is going to know more about your chest pain than the cardiologist.
Maybe. I don't know anything about that, Blue. But
podiatrist is a foot doctor.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, that's the other thing too. Like, you know, some nurses know more than some doctors. Is that the exception or is that the rule? Do you think that majority of nurses know more than heart doctors or heart surgeons? Or do you think it's very few and far in between of the nurses that do are that much more knowledgeable than the doctors? I find that odd that in every situation, especially those that are trying to defend Bryan Kohberger, they put so much value into the exception. Right? So much value. Like, oh man, this one guy at one time somewhere down the road got his DNA underneath the fingernails of a victim, and he wasn't there. You know, but yeah, that guy also was at the hospital where the other guy who the paramedic who ended up assisting the dead person assisted both of them. Bryan Kohberger was by himself, isolated, and according to him, in a closed park. Don't get more secluded than that, my man. Yeah. All righty, guys. I want to say thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We are going to get Forensic Frenzy on the show. She just has to make sure that all these things end up getting cleared up first. Like she said, at the end of the day, it's more important that this information be right and in the right hands than on our show and us talking and speculating. I think the mere fact that it's now being investigated and it's, you know, they're not allowing her to come up with this and say this kind of puts a lot of validity into what this discovery was, and that being that Bryan Kohberger was connected to the victims. Big Blue, you have yourself a good night. Don't get too drunk, my man.
No, well, man, I might have one more beer, but have a good night. My computer's dying. I forgot to plug it in, so already.
Well, until next time. We'll see you guys later. We'll probably be back on Saturday. Peace.